meet, y'all. I'm Lady River, and welcome to Gaia Unveiled, the podcast on science for witches and pagans. So, last episode, all that hot reproduction, right? Well, what does all that genetic variability get us? It gets us lots of new species. Sometimes, a section of a given species will become isolated and eventually become an entirely new species. We call this process speciation. It allows for greater diversity of species and more complex and stable ecosystems. Speciation can sometimes cause the loss of the older forms forever, only understood theoretically from fossil remains. Yo pagans, sound familiar? The Reconstructionists are now fist-bumping this podcast. To identify when speciation occurs, we have to agree on the definition of a species. For brevity, let's oversimplify and define a species as a group of individuals that can interbreed and yield fertile offspring that can likewise breed back into the group. Members of a species exchange genes freely among their collective offspring. If individuals can't interbreed successfully, they don't belong to one species, and genes aren't exchanged across their descendants, if they could even have descendants. For example, mules have 63 chromosomes, a mixture of the mama horse's 64 and the papa donkey's 62. An odd number of chromosomes usually prevents them from pairing up properly before attempting to undergo meiosis. Even worse, their chromosomes can't match up for division because they don't have enough matching sets of genes to recognize a partner. It's like trying to zip up a zipper where one side is missing teeth. It's like trying to swing dance with someone who only knows the waltz. If your gamete-producing cells can't do the meiosis tango, you can't make babies. Mules, and hinnies, their reverse, can only make gametes on rare occasion, and so are considered a hybrid of horses and donkeys, not their own species. Not all members of the same species do actually interbreed, though, like street puppet artists and rural militias. The groups they actually live in are called populations. I'm not talking here about prides of lions or murders of crows. I mean the individuals in a given area that are all accessible to one another. Usually, populations are separated by distance or geographical barriers, sometimes things like laying eggs and different kinds of fruit, although this is under dispute. Physical separations, and sometimes maybe cultural separations, shape the population available to you. Speciation is all about available population. When populations become isolated from one another, they don't share new mutations, and different environments have different influences on evolution. So eventually, the populations, as they continue on their inevitable march of change, cannot interbreed anymore, even if the barrier is removed. This could be because their genetics are no longer compatible, because they've changed just enough that they don't recognize one another anymore, as in changes in bird songs, or because they now mate at incompatible times, as in plants that flower in different seasons. These two populations are now distinct. One lineage becomes two, and the two lines no longer exchange genes. Now, rewind this podcast about 45 seconds and listen to that again, substituting meme for gene, coven for population, and tradition for species. I, of course, am using meme in its pre-internet meaning of an idea that functions culturally like a gene does biologically. Social and cultural groups evolve and speciate just like biological groups. What is isolation for a coven? Geographic distance, ideological intolerance, social differences? Seasonal celebration requirements? What's the habitat to which a coven adapts, from which it receives its evolutionary pressures? The realities of its environment? The spiritual needs of the individuals involved? The pantheons we experience? Its budget? How do we ensure that we all have freedom to swim in the same meme pool, yet allow for appropriate variation and proper adaptation? Is it bad if a group isolates, or speciates as it were, and creates more diversity, which we all crave in the biological world? And is there a limit to how much diversity is desirable? Ask a cheetah. Species with a very low number of members are very unstable and prone to dying out for lack of genetic flexibility for adaptation. Purebred populations are shorter-lived than hybridized ones with a strong assortment of genes/memes to select within the group. I'm not offering any answers or opinions, just an ecological model for thinking about hiving, about lineage, about what makes a tradition, and how much variation a group can exhibit before they no longer have an identity as members of that tradition, or as Wiccans, or as pagans at all. How can we encourage fertile interbreeding of our rich variety of ideas and thoughts, lest we lose some of that richness to inbreeding? If we cannot integrate new ideas, do we lose some members of our movement to other religious groups, or to none? And if it's equivalent to spawning a new ideological species, is it then even a, quote, problem? And when you think you have the answers, ask me about ring species. Thanks for joining me on Gaia Unveiled. Opening and closing themes are Magic Trance by Julius H. and Magic Event by Christian Bodie, respectively. Both are courtesy of Pixabay. Coming up in episode 5, we're going to finish out this biological theme with how predators bumped life on this planet out of its comfort zone, creating pretty much all the types of life we have today. See you next time. Keep reasoning, and blessed be. Hey again, real quick thing. If you liked this podcast, dropping a review in your podcast app is a great way to support the show and makes you 16% cooler than you already are. Or you can come geek out with us on the Gaia Unveiled Facebook page, or support the show at patreon.com/Gaia_Unveiled. If you can spare a few bucks a month, you get some nifty rewards, and I get a personal connection with you that helps me make the show even better. You can also find me on Twitter at LadyRiver8 or email me at GaiaUnveiled@gmail.com. You can find the show wherever you like to listen to podcasts, and even on YouTube with transcripts. See you soon, and thanks.